Avalanche warnings, heavy snow, flooding rains, high winds, power outages, tornadoes, and aliens messing with our satellite feed. Are you kidding me? We've got all the details, plus a look at the extended range, today's trivia question, and a brand new segment called Find the Word. You're not going to want to miss that, so stick around. A hot new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World drops right now. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting edition of Cold Rain's Weather World. My name is Jason Pritchard, your host for the show. If you're brand new to the channel, I want to welcome you here and let you know that we have two main forms of content that we produce here. It's mostly all related to weather. The first form is a shorter form content type that I launched this weekend. It's called Cold Rain's Weather Update, where we're going to really try to keep it fast-paced and take a look at things at a high level. And we're going to look at current weather and weather events. We're going to spotlight some of the weather events that are happening around the country, but we're going to kind of keep it high level, focus on 5 to 7 day period. The Cold Rain's Weather World show that you've tuned into is a little bit more of a longer form show, and we do some fun things like have a hometown spotlight. We've got our daily trivia. We'll have some guest sponsors from time to time. But today we've got a brand new segment that we're rolling out called Find the Word. So stick around, you're not going to want to miss that. But we take a look at some of the deeper processes or do a deeper dive in some of the processes that are driving the weather. So we'll learn a few things along the way too. As I said, I'm glad you're here. If you're returning, thank you for coming back. Please consider hitting the subscribe button, like the video if you like it, share it with family and friends, and leave a comment in the comment section. It could be a prayer request. We take prayer requests here because we want to pray for you and walk alongside of you if something's going on in your life that we can pray over. We're happy to do that. Certainly leave a comment about the show, a question that you might have, a suggestion for future shows, and we'll try to incorporate all of those into future shows. So anyways, thank you for being here, and without further ado, we're going to start off with today's trivia question. Now, because we've got a little bit of wind going on the northwest, which we'll take a look at in a minute, it moved me to ask what is the windiest place on Earth? And so that is our trivia question for today. What is the windiest place on Earth? Is it Mount Washington, Wellington, New Zealand, Commonwealth Bay, Antarctica, or Patagonia, Argentina? We'll have the answer at the end of the show, so stick around for that. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and dive into the weather. We've got several things on the agenda that we're going to cover today. Obviously, we've got a big atmospheric river event that we've been talking about that's affecting the Pacific Northwest, so we're going to get into that first. Then we're going to take a look at the little cluster of showers and thunderstorms affecting the Florida Peninsula. Southern Florida, you're under the gun today for potential for severe weather. It's not a big potential, so it's not a high risk or anything like that, but there could be a few spin-ups along the Keys in southern Florida, and so we're going to take a look at that as well. Take a quick look at the weather roundup across the rest of the nation, and then we'll dive into the long range after that. And we'll get into our new segment called Find the Word. So you want to stick around for that. That's going to be fun, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll have timestamps for all of this in the description section of the video, so you can just skip to where you want to go. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the show, and so here we go. So we're going to start here where we typically do with our satellite imagery, and as we put this into motion, you can actually see a couple of things occur right off the bat. We get all this pixelation. I'm not sure what that's about. Maybe there's some solar flare activity, or maybe the aliens from Independence Day have hijacked our signal. But in any event, it doesn't stop us from seeing the cloud cover that is impacting the United States, and we certainly see some of that in the form of the storm system that's off the west coast. This is part of that atmospheric river event that's underway out here. It's I think the third in the series of storms that are impacting this area, and it's moving up toward southern Canada, but the effects are going to be felt all throughout this area, and we'll get into that here in a few minutes. And then we've got some clouds associated with a couple of little waves of low pressure, clippers, if you will, moving across the northern tier of the country. Not going to bring any severe weather, strong snow events or anything like that, but we're going to just see a little bit of light precipitation as it breaks out. I think some light precipitation is occurring, some light rain is occurring over here toward maybe Kansas, Missouri, somewhere in there. And then we've got some fog down here. You can see that showing up as blue before the boundary between daylight and night hits, but that's burning off as the temperature warms up. Dallas, Houston, you've been under the gun with some dense fog this morning. And then the other kind of area of focus is over Florida. We had this low pressure system move out of the deep south into the Gulf of Cold Rain, and it is approaching Florida, and it's sparking showers and thunderstorm activity. And we're going to look at this here a little more closely in a minute, because there is a potential for some uh, a marginal risk of severe weather with a couple of brief tornado spin-ups possible down here. So we'll look at that. So as we flip over to our radar image, you can certainly see this area of activity up in the Pacific Northwest. That's moving up, is associated with a warm front for that storm offshore, and you're getting some heavier rainfall rates here. Some rain up here in northern Montana over into North Dakota. So you're seeing some precipitation here, some light spotty precipitation over Kansas and Missouri. And then this other clipper that's just bringing some precipitation up here north of the Great Lakes. So we're not really looking at too much out of any of this. This is light stuff, not going to be a showstopper by any stretch of the imagination. And then down here in Florida, we're looking back, and we're seeing this area of rain and thunderstorms that I mentioned earlier. So we're going to take more of a look at that in just a moment. Now, looking at our surface map, you can see sort of a warm front extending from that system offshore that's lifting north. This cold front has come through and is going to be dropping. Cold air is going to be funneling in here in this area, and so the Cascades and northern Rockies, the Bitterroots, you're going to see snow levels start to drop again. A little front associated with that clipper bringing a cool shot, and then this system that I was talking about down here in the Gulf. So no real major wound up systems across the country today, which is good. We've had a really active period. Now we're kind of progressing into a quieter period, and that's certainly good news as we get on into the next couple of days. Our hazards map, this looks a lot different than it did the other day. This was full of colors, and now we have dense fog advisories that are about to expire down here in Texas and Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas. Our main area of focus is up in the Pacific Northwest, up here in the northern plains, where you've got high wind warnings in Montana for winds gusting in excess of 50 to maybe even approaching 60 miles per hour in spots. Avalanche warnings up here in the northern and in the Bitterroots, where you've got heavy snow that has accumulated over the course of the winter, and now you've got rain falling on top of that. It's going to destabilize some of that snow and send it down the mountain, and some of that could be you could reach into the lower elevation. So if you're traveling in this area up here, be very, very cautious and pay attention to what's going on around you. So still some flood warnings here in effect, and some winter storm warnings up in the northern Cascades down into Oregon as well, where you can see as much as 1 to 3 feet of snow. So definitely be on the lookout for that. As the snow levels fall, you're going to see more snowfall, and that's going to really rack up those totals over the next 24 to 36 hours. And then some high wind warnings still in effect in the higher peaks out here and then along the coast. We're going to look at that in a minute, but some high gusty winds all throughout western Washington and western Oregon as this storm system winds up. It's going to get down into the 978, 77, 79 millibar range, so somewhere in that range, but that's a pretty strong system out here. And so we're going to see how that sort of plays out. Now this is a representation of that. So we focus in here on the Pacific Northwest. There's that storm system. Look at this. Clouds associated with this all the way back north of Hawaii, just northeast of Hawaii. That's just funneling in. It's been funneling in all of this moisture out of the Pacific. And fortunately, this is about to come to an end as we get on into the middle part of the week. Looking at the radar image, we'll go on here to another display so I can show that a little bit better. But you can see all of this activity up here. Let's go back out. You can see that up into the Pacific Northwest here. Let me get on a better display. There we go. Sorry, I'm flipping through all of my displays. As I flip through these maps, they're all kind of centered differently, but you get the point. So we got this heavier area of precipitation moving on in, and this will overspread Washington today, so places like Seattle, Olympia. You guys are going to get under the gun with some heavier rains. Those flood watches have been lifted, thankfully. But we're still looking anywhere in this area picking up 1 to 3 inches of rain, with more than that in the higher peak. So another threat here we're looking at is potentially some stronger storms. Not an outbreak. See no tornado threat at all if we hover over wind. We're looking at 5%. So some of these stronger areas up here that form convection, can translate some of those winds down to the surface, and you could see some gusts outside of the advisory. There's just a background wind threat already with wind advisories and high wind warnings up, but any convective elements that kind of get stronger can make use of some of that wind in the lower part of the atmosphere, push it down to the ground, and you could see gusts into the 60s with some of those stronger elements. So your precipitation outlook here is going to be, let's pop back up here, and you can see right up here along the western half of Washington, Oregon. That's where we're really staring down the barrel of that atmospheric river event. And so look, up here in the northern coastal range up to the Olympics and the northern Cascades, you're seeing totals potentially getting on into the 3, 4, 5 inch mark. You could have some of these rainfall rates coming down at 1 to 1.5 inches per hour, and some of the higher peaks for a time as we get into tonight, into early Tuesday morning, and then tapering off as we go through the day on Tuesday. So looking at your winds, this is the other big threat up here in the northwest is wind threat. So I'm showing the European model wind gusts. Other models tend to agree with this. So if we put this on into time and we get into Monday afternoon, you start to see those winds pick up along the coast. All of these coastal areas are under high wind warnings. You can see winds gusting to around 60 miles per hour, which is pretty strong. And so that's going to be blowing a lot of objects around, potentially downing some trees where you've got saturated soils or weakened trees. So I'd be prepared for power outages, particularly along the coast, and then some of the higher elevations in the coastal range too. So look at these gusts as they come on in through the overnight period. It really cranks up. Looking at about 7 p.m. this evening, we start to really see the winds cranking along the coast here. These gusts, these oranges, are gusts into the 50s, up into the mid to upper 50s, with some of these brighter oranges back into these green sections that you see here, gusts into the 30s, up to around 40, 45 miles per hour. So watch this as we go on through the night. Really cranks up along the coast, so you could really see some gusts around 60, 65 miles per hour. So power outages likely along the coastal areas, sporadic power outages as you get on in to some of the valleys. Seattle, you guys are probably going to gust into, in Portland, probably going to gust into the mid 40s at times, with generally 20 to 30 miles per hour background winds beyond that. So that storm system will wind up off the coast, kind of pull out. So if we go through Tuesday morning, this is going to start to wind down. You can see the wind field start to diminish a bit, move on off toward Montana and Idaho, and so you'll actually get to see some relief as we get on into Wednesday from all of this. And looking at the snowfall totals, we talked a little bit about this. So the other kind of hazard in the mountains anyway is the lowering of the snowfall height, so down to around 3,000 or 4,000 feet from about 7,000 feet as it currently sits. And then we'll go on in here and kind of roll this forward. So over the next 24 to 36 hours is where you're going to pick up the bulk of the snow. And you can see, 1 to 3 feet generally along the mountains here in the Cascades, and over and as we get on into the Bitterroots and this area here in western Montana and northern Idaho. So that is your Pacific Northwest weather roundup. And so now we're going to take a look at the situation down in southern Florida. So down here in Florida, you've got rain falling all up and down the peninsula, but the focus is going to be really on the southern half and really the southern tip into the Keys, where we've got a marginal risk of severe weather. Looking at our hazards, tornado less than 2%. So you've got surging dew points down here. So you've really got an unstable air mass or marginally unstable air mass, and so the stronger convection can kind of make use of some of that to grow taller thunderstorms. And you've got vertical wind shear, and so that's all going to act together to at least keep the possibility of tornadoes in the picture. Weak tornadoes, brief tornadoes is the most likely outcome. Obviously, anytime there is a tornado threat, you want to keep your eye to the sky and keep a weather source active on your phone or an app or something that you use. National Weather Service will be the ones to issue those warnings as they come out. So pay attention if you're down here in southern Florida. Wind threat, not all that high either, 5%. So not looking at too widespread of a severe event. Just know that this is possible today. If we take a look at our radar, and you can see down here heavier rain across the northern half of Florida and the southern half into the Keys, to see these little convective elements that are starting to form here. So be vigilant throughout the day as you go through here. All of this should wind down as we get into tonight and tomorrow, and so this will dry out. But this is the other place to pay attention to today: active weather down here in Florida. Now, as far as the rest of the country goes, it's a fairly tranquil pattern. We're not really looking at anything major over the next 5 to 6 to 7 days. Beyond that period, we could start to see a little bit of a change. There's some hints that some cold air can maybe creep back into the pattern, and a couple of more impactful storms may develop with some thunderstorm activity, potentially even severe weather. So we'll pay attention to that in the coming days. Maybe some snow up in the northeast. That's where it looks most likely to overlap cold and moisture. And so we'll pay attention to that, but stay tuned as we go through the next couple of days. We'll have all of the coverage here at Cold Rain's Weather Channel. So taking a look at our jet stream pattern, pretty flat and zonal. So outside of the storm activity off of the northwest coast, we've got a zonal flow. The polar and Arctic jets are way up here in Canada, so you're not going to see any major intrusions of Arctic air like we saw just a week or two ago. But running this out through the next couple of days as we get on into Tuesday, you're seeing Monday afternoon into the evening into Tuesday. Southern stream is dipping down here into the Gulf. You've got a little northern branch kind of coming through up here, but you don't really see a lot of activity. All of this just sort of is mostly zonal flow. You'll see a few dips and stuff. So here's a little bit of a dip, and you get this little low that's I don't know, not really a clipper, but it's like a little bit of a wave of low pressure. It'll spark some precipitation up here, but nothing really big. When you start to see big U shapes or V shape type formations in the jet stream is where you start to pay attention for larger storms, but we really don't see any of that. Subtropical jet just kind of goes west to east across the southern tier of the country. You get a little bit of a kink here, and so you get this little clipper coming out as we get on into Thursday into Friday, and really not all that much. You start to see a little bit of troughing. So when you see jets coming out of the north like this, above to the north of that's where you get your cold air. So watch this as we get on into the end of the 6-day period here. So this is when is this? This is 6Z Sunday, so that'll be overnight Saturday night, and so you're going to get a little response here of a trough in the east, got this big ridge going up. So I would expect, and we'll see this in a minute, warmer temperatures to be shooting up in here, and then a little bit cooler up in the northeast down into the upper southeast over time. If we take a look at the precipitation outlook, we've got current active weather in Florida, current active weather in the northwest. Got this little system up here over the lakes, but watch this. We go on into Monday evening into early Tuesday morning. You see kind of a quiet pattern. This starts to quiet down in the upper northwest, Pacific Northwest. You got this little low that we looked at on the jet stream that's moving through. Very light precipitation, big low winding up offshore, not going to affect anything. The United States, no interest in the United States will be affected by that. So we'll go on and flip this into motion. And you can see as we get on into Thursday, little snow breaking out over portions of upstate New York into the northern New England areas. High pressure dominating the western half of the country. So just quiet as it can be. A little trough in the east as we get on in toward the end of the period. And you got another little clipper sneaking out of Canada. It's going to dive through the lakes into the northeast and produce a little bit of light snow in through these areas, maybe pick up a couple of inches of snow with that. Another high pressure back behind it, some rain, working back into the Pacific Northwest over time, but just quiet as we get on into the next 6 days. And boy, we can all use that. So all of those little systems that move across, with the exception of the big Pacific Northwest storm and the Florida system today, the rest of the week, as I said, is quiet, and we only get a small precipitation response in here. This is the European ensemble precipitation mean. So we didn't really see a lot of active weather, but we do see some evidence that there could be some small little systems that work in over the course of the week to drop a little bit of a light precipitation, a little light rain. In most areas of the country are going to be above normal, so I don't expect a lot of snowfall. If we see anything fall, it's going to be rain. And so a little bit of light rain potentially over the next week, but nothing, as I said, it's a quiet week. We don't see a lot. Most of your new activity is going to be up here in the northeastern part of the country where some rain and snow can fall. And as those clippers come by, they're going to reverse the wind direction across the lakes. You're going to start to see some lake effect snow. That's what's driving some of this precipitation that you see in just to the lead of the lakes. So look out for that as we get on in toward the end of the week. And then snowfall, as I said, not looking at a lot of snowfall here. Your snowfall probabilities kind of line up with this. I mean, if we were to look at the probability map for an inch of snow, you'd certainly see these areas with higher probabilities in sort of the Pacific Northwest area. and these mountainous areas here on into the Rockies. This is where you're going to see your highest probabilities for at least an inch of snow, and some of these areas are going to be a lot more than that. And then over here, as we get into later in the week, you'll see the clippers kind of move through and drop some snow into the northeast. So anywhere above these pink lines is where I would expect any sort of appreciable snow to fall. And so that's your weather roundup in terms of precipitation. We'll take a look at temperatures next and see how those shake out, but really, again, just sort of above average and kind of ho-hum as we go on through the next few days. The theme of the temperature pattern across the lower 48 over the course of the next 5 to 7 days is above normal. And I'll show you an anomaly map that will bear that out in just a minute. In the meantime, looking at some of the high temperatures throughout the course of the next 5 days, this afternoon we've got a nice mild southern tier of the nation. Really, the whole nation is mild, 30s and 40s across the border. 60s punching all the way up into South Dakota, nice and mild across the south, 80s in southwest Texas and to the desert southwest. Tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday, 30s and 40s and 50s all the way across the northern tier of the country. Mild, very mild and warm even across the south. Wednesday, a little bit of a trough pushes in and cools down some of the western areas a little bit, but you still got a nice area of warmth across Dixie into Florida. And then that same temperature pattern holds on Thursday, Friday, a little bit chillier up in the northeast, but nothing too scary there. So look at Friday. Big area of 60s into the central part of the country, into the plains, into the heartland area here. And then as we get into Saturday, that cools off a little bit. We've got a little punch of cooler air up in the northeast, but very, very mild start to the weekend across the south. This is going to feel really, really good. So get out and enjoy the weather there, folks. That's your high temperatures for the week. Looking at our low temperature pattern, it sort of mirrors the high temperature pattern. It's going to be chillier across the north, as you would expect, milder across the south. So tonight, overnight into Tuesday morning, 30s up north, 40s to the south. Same story, we get a little bit of a cooler punch into the west as we get on into the week. So some of the higher peaks are going to reach maybe into the single digits, but 20s and 30s out there, 20s and 30s across the Great Lakes, mild everywhere else into the 40s. Same pattern as we get into Thursday, Friday. It looks about the same. Got some cooler air up here in Canada. You can see minus 20s. So that's actually really, really cold. But that's going to stay above the border. But it wouldn't take much to kind of bring that down. So we're going to watch that as we get into the later portion of the period. And then we see a little trough start to work into the east as we get on into Sunday into Monday. We might start to see a little punch of cooler weather. But generally, the theme is mild. And if we look at our anomaly map here, take a look at this. Mild across Canada into the northern plains. We're looking at, what is that? That's 11 to as much as, say, we'll call it 10 to 20 above normal here. The only normal to maybe even below normal spot is the south and southeast. And so, but we're still talking about nice warm temperatures here. So mild across the entire country. We'll enjoy this nice quiet pattern while it lasts. We may see some storms start to work back into the picture, a little bit of colder air when you start to get into March and April. You get these big clashes of warm and cool air that can really fuel some some stronger storms. And with that, you'll get potentially thunderstorms and severe weather outbreaks on the southern side of those systems. And then on the cooler side, you're going to get bigger snowfall totals. So we'll see how that shakes out. There's some signs that kind of a pattern might start to set up as we get on into middle and late portions of March, but we'll take a look at that. All right, moving on ahead, taking a look at the long range. We're going to look at the European ensemble mean height anomaly today and the GFS ensemble mean height anomaly. We'll look at the European model operational to see if it has any sort of mischief as we go along in time. And then we'll look at the snowfall probability. So stick around. So this is the European ensemble mean hemispheric pattern. We're looking at blues represent troughs in the upper atmosphere, which would generally equate to cooler temperatures at the surface. Ridging, like you see right here in the western part of the country, would indicate warmer than normal conditions at the surface as we have upper level ridging. So if we pull this map along, this is 144 hours, so it's like day 6, looking at Saturday evening into Sunday. And we roll this on forward, and you can see the little trough pops out of the western part of the country. You've got some action in the southern jet that comes along. It's a little storm system that's probably going to create some rain and precipitation through at least some of the southern portions of the country. And then we go on out in time, and the signal starts to get muted. This would indicate to me that we've got a little bit of spread in the individual ensemble members. This is, again, a mean. But if you look here, it sort of puts the trough back. We got a stronger signal for a trough in the east as we get on out here into 306 hours. That's Saturday, March the 8th. So pretty far out in time. And then we go on out to the end of the run, and we start to get kind of a messy look here. It's just a big blue blob. We'll call this a blob. This is the blob of blue, which is a non-technical meteorological term. Sometimes we use those here at Cold Rains Weather World. So in any event, this is not something that you would expect big, deep cold into the United States, but it could result in a little bit of a zonal flow here. So you've got some mild Pacific air kind of coming in here. So probably we'll see, even though it's blue here, we may end up seeing milder at the surface. And so the GFS ensemble, what does it show? We'll start at the same time period, roll that out, kind of generally agreeing with the European, with the trough in the east. Got that little storm going across the south there, you can see. Then we get a little bit of an active southern branch of the jet stream here, pumping in some milder air. And then we go on out in time, we get a nice big blue signal. Now, when you start to see these big blue and purple show up, that's a little bit of a more agreement within the ensemble members that you're out in time, you're seeing a big trough. And that's, a lot of this is over Canada, so probably Canada's pretty cold up there. And then we get on out further, that trough sets up in the east, got a little ridge response out west, and then sort of the big blue blob again that we saw in the European. And so what does this all mean? Well, let's look at the 850 millibar temperature anomaly. This is a good proxy for what's going on at the surface. And again, back day 6, rolling this forward, European ensemble mean here, got a little cooler weather here, working into the northeast and southern mid-Atlantic ridge over the central part of the nation. Cooler weather coming in as we get on out into March the 5th and the 6th. Down the line, look at this, milder temperatures with the exception of the southeast, and that's just very, very slightly cool. But out here, Saturday, March the 9th, look at this. Just, folks, this is not a winter weather pattern that we're seeing here show up on the European ensemble mean. The other day, it was showing much cooler weather here. So now it's showing a little bit warmer air. We've got a jet that's sort of retracting a bit, but there's still energy in that jet, and it's poking into the western part of the country here, and it's sort of flooding. You see these streamlines kind of go up here and go down here. This is at 850, but anyway, at upper levels, it's sort of bringing in milder Pacific air. So hard to get big southeast snowstorms in that, but we can still get storms, and certainly some thunderstorms to go along with that and severe weather. So we'll look at that here in a sec. But GFS, similar situation, trough in the east, ridge in the center part of the country as we slide this forward, March the 5th and the 6th. Ridge over the east, so you're going to have warm temperatures in that time frame. Trough digs back into the west, and look at what the GFS does. Remember, I showed you how cold and blue and purple it was up here in Canada. Look, those are some pretty cold 850 anomalies. They just get a little colder over time. That spreads down into the eastern part of the country. So the GFS is actually showing, the GFS ensembles rather, showing more of a propensity for cold in the center and eastern part of the country, and you can see that play out over time. And then we've got mild working in by the end of the period, which takes us all the way to March the 12th. So we're getting close to mid-March, and we're not seeing major agreement on cold air intrusions, which if you're really in the east and you're looking for winter storms, and you're sort of south of this line here, you want to start seeing some cold air coming in by mid-March. It's really hard to snow. It can snow, but it gets harder and harder the further you get into March. So maybe this will turn around. The MJO's kind of playing in the sandbox in phase 1, which is a colder phase. And so we'll see if the models sort of pick that up over time, or maybe there's just too much jet activity coming in here and dominating the pattern. If we look at the actual storm, surface map and precipitation types, so we can roll this out 144 hours again. That's Saturday into Sunday. And you can see not much going on. It's been pretty quiet, but look what happens as we get on into Tuesday of next week. Storm system starts to take shape here. This is the European operational run, by the way. That takes shape, and you see this little line back into North Carolina. It started here in Georgia, but this would be thunderstorm activity here. So we'll have to pay attention as these things start to wind up. This is 988 millibar low, so it's strengthened a little bit. And above where the cold air exists, above that line, you're getting snow. So we're going to have to start paying attention as we get on in later to the period and see if our active pattern returns again, because we can see that sort of shape up here with this model. At least it's what it's showing here. It goes on to wind that storm up, and you get this nice big snow band up here in the north, the upstate New York, and on into Vermont and New Hampshire eventually, and Maine. And so you can see that kind of pull out. And then another little system starts to come in and take shape and dive to the south and southeast as we get on into March the 11th and the 12th. So maybe some snow. If this were to play out, you've got plenty of cold air up here in Canada, maybe some snow into parts of New England and the northern mid-Atlantic that haven't really seen all that much snow, and places like Boston and Philly and New York City and potentially Long Island. I don't know. This is far out in time, so we'll have to wait and see how that all plays together. Probability of snowfall. I told you we're going to look at these maps. So as we got in time here, day 6, all the way out to, I'm just going to run this forward, all the way out to day, this is a European ensemble mean, so this goes out to 15 days. So this is March the 10th. And look at this. Probability of 1 inch of snowfall, look at this. That doesn't give us a lot of enthusiasm about big winter storm event anywhere in the near future. Look, this is a 90 to 100% here. So where you see the red, that's 90 to 100%. So I don't like to rely specifically on these probability maps just because they're kind of misused and people don't understand what this means. But in this event, I'm more apt to rely on it because it's showing snowfall, new snowfall, where it should be showing new snowfall. You know, if you're going to snow this time of year, this is the best place to do it. Great Lakes up into the Northeast, and then over here into the Intermountain West, up along into the Cascades. That's where you're going to see snowfall, and we see that kind of play out. So that's what I would expect, and so I have high confidence that this map is probably going to turn out accurate unless we get on out into the end of that period and we start to see some major changes over the next couple of days. GFS is going to look a little bit similar. I think it's a little bit more generous with its snowfall output, so it brings the probability line down a little further. But in any event, most of your snowfall looks to be confined into the upper Northeast and Intermountain West. And, you know, it's got some light shades down here. So maybe, what is that, 10, 20%? So not out of the question, but again, I would not go to Vegas and bet the mortgage on it. Okay. So let's keep watching it. We'll see what happens. So, but that's your long range outlook, and we'll have more on it tomorrow. And that brings us to our brand new segment in Cold Rain's Weather World called Find the Word. At Cold Rain's Weather World, we want to educate you on the weather, of course, and equip you with information so that when you go out into the world, you can talk intelligently about the weather and the processes that drive it. But we go further here, and this is a service that you won't get on many other weather podcasts. And one of the things that we do in addition to educating you about the weather is making sure that you are up to date on rules of etiquette and civility. And for that, we turn to George Washington's rules of civility and decent behavior in company and conversation. And we also want to make sure that you're able to, when you're engaging with friends and family, to be able to impress them by being able to spot fake words when they show up in social media and in conversation. And to that end, we've come up with a new segment called Find the Word. So I'm going to put 2 words on the screen, and we're going to guess which one is the correct word and which one is the incorrect word. All right, so the first set of words is supposedly versus supposedly. Can you spot the incorrect word? If you said supposedly, you are correct. Supposedly is not a word. It is an incorrect pronunciation of the word supposedly. So remember, it is supposedly going to rain tomorrow in Seattle, but supposedly stop after that. Okay. Regardless versus irregardless. Regardless of whether or not you like snow, the weather will do what the weather will do. So I'll give you a hint there. Can you spot the wrong word? If you said irregardless, you are correct. All right, 2 for 2. The next set, espresso versus espresso. Have you ever tried an espresso? I've ridden on an espresso before, but I've never drank an espresso. So the correct word is espresso. Espressos are strong, and I do not like espressos. And our last word has to do with a frozen dessert that many people enjoy. Is it sherbet or is it sherbet? The answer is sherbet. Sherbet. It is not sherbet. Sherbet rhymes with zerbert. And if you don't know what a zerbert is, check that out on Google. Okay, that wraps up our Find the Word segment. We'll do that again another time because there are other words out there that are commonly mistaken. So that leads us to today's trivia question. And the question is, what is the windiest place on Earth? Is it Mount Washington, Wellington, New Zealand, Patagonia, Argentina, or Commonwealth Bay, Antarctica? It might surprise you to know that the answer is Commonwealth Bay, Antarctica, where the average annual wind speed is 50 miles per hour. So if you show up at Commonwealth Bay, the wind's going to be blowing. It might be blowing 50 miles per hour or higher. The terrain and increasing gradient of the ice surface is what causes this. And so you have this wind field that blows, and then it gets funneled, and it goes down some of the slopes there. And so this causes winds to accelerate. And so this leads to katabatic wind speeds that are routinely measured in excess of 150 miles per hour. That's not uncommon at Commonwealth Bay. So what are katabatic winds? Is it the result of this flapping its wings? No, it is not the result of a katabat. Katabatic winds are actually winds that flow down a slope and pick up speed due to gravity. They are also known as windfalls, which is not the same as windfall. We would all like a windfall, but we would not like to be in a windfall. So hold on to your hats at Commonwealth Bay, where umbrellas are useless and kites are strongly discouraged and trampolines are strictly prohibited. Now we're going to take a deep dive into... Unfortunately, that sound means we're out of time. So with that, we'll call it a wrap for today. I hope you've had a great time and enjoyed yourself. And now you know the weather and a few other things. So this is Cold Rain reminding you, if you did not like the weather that you saw today, there's a better model out there somewhere with weather that you might like. It's your job to go find it. Take care and have a great afternoon. We'll see you back tomorrow.